An expedition is underway.
We'll try and see inside there and get the condition of that bulkhead.
And it may rewrite the history of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. A day that forever lives in infamy.
December 7, 1941, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked.
This is the exact moment when the United States was drawn into World War II. You would think that we would know just about everything about this attack. We don't.
Most people think of the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor as an aerial assault, raining down from the sky. But now, the mysterious wreck of a Japanese submarine, missing for almost 70 years, has been found in the waters just outside Pearl Harbor. Could the attack have also come from below?
It's my conclusion after analyzing the data that this sub fired its torpedoes prior to its sinking.
It's almost like a CSI situation where we have a crime scene.
We have numerous torpedo tracks in the water.
Can forensic science unlock the secrets of the mystery sub and reveal the true story of the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Fire the hole!
Pearl Harbor is wrapped in enigma and mystery, and somewhere is the truth.
Killer subs in Pearl Harbor. Next on Nova.
Major funding for Nova is provided by the following.
I've been growing algae for 35 years. Most people try to get rid of algae, and we're trying to grow it. The algae are very beautiful. They come in blue or red, golden, green. Algae could be converted into biofuels that we could someday run our cars on. And using algae to form biofuels, we're not competing with the food supply. And they absorb CO2, so they help solve the greenhouse problem as well. We're making a big commitment to finding out just how much algae can help to meet the fuel demands of the world.
And by Pacific Life, the power to help you succeed, offering insurance, annuities, and investments. And David H. Koch. And
discovering new knowledge. HHMI.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Oahu, one of the Hawaiian Islands, a vacation paradise in the Pacific. Spectacular vistas, tropical beaches, and vivid reminders of the past. For a few hours early on December 7th, 1941, this little piece of heaven became a living hell. The sky that Sunday morning blazed in the crossfire of a fierce aerial assault. More than 350 Japanese aircraft bombing and blasting the American Pacific Fleet berthed in Pearl Harbor. Dive bombers strafing people, planes, and structures on the shore. The surprise attack shook not only the entire harbor, but also an entire nation that suddenly found itself at war. Over 2,400 Americans lost their lives in the battle. Almost half of them died on just one ship. The USS Arizona. It remains under the sea, a powerful symbol of a devastating day. Today, a monument is built on top of the wreck. Over 1 million people visit each year and pay their respects to the 1,177 men, most of whom remain entombed inside the hull of the Arizona below. A sunken, 600-foot-long steel coffin.
This skin come off the side of my butt.
Don Stratton was on the Arizona directing anti-aircraft guns at incoming planes when the ship caught fire and sank.
My hair was burned off. I lost part of my nose, part of my ear. My back was burnt. Both my legs were burnt. It was just a hell of a day, but I don't talk about that much. So that's all I got to say about that.
But there was another part of the Japanese offensive completely hidden from view.
Popular perception is that the Pearl Harbor attack was primarily an aerial attack coming from the sky.
It's the ultimate air raid. But a closer look at the Battle of Pearl Harbor really reveals that there's a lot more to it than that. And it also tells us a lot about the Japanese expectations, that they really wanted to completely cripple the Pacific Fleet.
Compelling evidence now suggests that Pearl Harbor was attacked not only from above, but below. Hours before Japanese aircraft carriers launched their planes from a position north of Oahu, a secret weapon was already approaching from the south. According to military records, shortly after midnight, 5 Japanese submarines slipped undetected to within just a few miles of Pearl Harbor, each one carrying a technological marvel on its back, a 2-man midget sub. The 5 Type A midget submarines were about a quarter the length of the mother sub. Just 6 feet wide and packed with equipment, these miniature subs were designed for efficiency, not comfort. A 600-horsepower electric motor propelled the midget subs swiftly underwater at 19 knots, twice as fast as many American submarines of the day. The midget subs could not only take the enemy by surprise, they could hit the enemy hard. The bow of a midget sub on display at the Naval Academy in Japan shows how.
It carried 2 Type 97 long-length torpedoes, specially made for this midget sub.
Just one of these modified long-lance torpedoes could punch a hole in a towering battleship. The Japanese built hundreds of midget submarines during World War II and deployed them all across the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor would be the midget sub's opening act for the war that followed. Author Burl Burlingame has investigated their top-secret operation.
The midget submarines were supposed to get in the harbor, lie low, wait for the attack to happen, and then surface, fire their torpedoes into the American ships, attacking them from the bottom as well as from the top.
But how well did the plan succeed? We know that 4 of the 5 midget subs launched that morning failed in their mission.
One midget submarine was sunk before the attack. It did not fire its torpedoes.
Midget sub number 1 was shelled by the USS Ward over an hour before the Japanese warplanes attacked. It remains where it sank, just outside the harbor. Midget sub number 2 entered Pearl Harbor, but after missing its target with both torpedoes, the sub was destroyed by a pair of American ships. It was razed 2 weeks after the attack and buried as landfill. 2 down. And another 2 would never make it even close to the harbor. Midget sub number 3 ran aground on the east side of Oahu, and its captain became the first Japanese prisoner of war. Neither of its torpedoes had been fired. It is now on display at the National Museum of the Pacific War in Texas. The 4th midget sub turned up years later, several miles south of Pearl Harbor.
Another midget submarine was found in 1960 at Kehi Lagoon, and it still had its torpedoes in it. And that midget submarine was shipped back to Japan.
It now stands outside the Naval Academy in Etajima.
It's pretty clear that 4 of the submarines did not actually complete their mission.
What about number 5, the last of the midget subs?
The 5th one was a mystery. Historians differed on what it could have done or where it could have ended up.
We know that midget sub number 5 began its journey in Kure, Japan. Petty Officer Kichiji Dewa was aboard its mother sub the night number 5 launched into battle. Dewa recorded his thoughts in a secret diary.
After long days of waiting, X day has come. The crew were dressed in clean clothes and prepared.
During the war, the Japanese were told that the 5th midget sub had scored a devastating kill.
The Japanese midget submariners became the heroes of the attack in Japan. They were given credit for sinking the USS Arizona.
Did midget sub number 5 sink the Arizona or any other American battleship that day in Pearl Harbor?
I think that cat and mouse game is still going on with historians trying to find out what happened to the 5th sub.
Now, after almost 70 years, the mystery may be solved, and the true story of the attack on Pearl Harbor finally revealed. Terry Kirby is a submersible pilot who has been exploring the ocean floor around the Hawaiian Islands for years.
This is what it looked like when I first found it.
The area just outside of Pearl Harbor is an underwater museum of World War II debris.
We found wrecks of airplanes and vehicles and pier parts and lots of junk.
During a routine test dive 3 miles south of Pearl Harbor, Terry spotted something unusual.
Yeah, look at that. That's definitely a conning tower sticking. It looks like this whole end is blown off.
It was a long tube of steel, and to an expert eye, it resembled part of a Japanese midget sub. Terry eventually found 2 more sections spread out across the ocean floor. But are all 3 pieces from the same submarine? And if so, is it the wreck of midget sub number 5, missing since December 7th, 1941? NOVA has assembled a unique team of investigators to find out. They come from both sides of the battle, America and Japan. Leading the investigation is marine forensic historian Park Stevenson, a former U.S. Navy officer and submariner.
Today's the day. After months of study, we're actually going down to the wreck of the midget sub that we've identified as potentially the last of the missing Japanese midget subs that participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Joining Parks is Admiral Kazuo Ueda.
I was honored that Admiral Ueda offered to come out here. He was the senior surviving midget submariner from the war. No one knows the whole context of the Japanese midget subs better than he.
Admiral Ueda has his doubts about the midget sub. He doesn't think it is midget sub number 5, but one damaged and dumped by American forces later in the war. Historian Go Okumoto knows midget subs from the inside out.
He wrote a book on the midget submarines. He's probably the premier Japanese expert.
We'll try and get down to...
Go wants to study the wreck before drawing any conclusions.
Comes in, you'll have the opportunity.
The Japanese built hundreds of midget subs during the war.
One of the few things we know about the midget submarines as a class of submarines is that the Japanese Navy was always tinkering with them.
The 5 midget subs deployed at Pearl Harbor were early models, and unlike any that followed. The team plans to dive over 1,000 feet below the surface in 2 deep-sea research submersibles, the Pisces 4 and the Pisces 5. Admiral Ueda will dive in the Pisces 4. Go joins Park Stevenson in the Pisces 5 with Terry Kirby at the controls. Just big enough for a 3-person crew, the submersibles can dive to a depth of over a mile and stay down for up to 10 hours. Equipped with instruments to monitor the ocean and collect samples, the Pisces 4 and the Pisces 5 are state-of-the-art midget submarines. But they're tools of science, not weapons of war. Entirely different from the Japanese midget subs of 1941. Even though Terry's been down here before, doesn't mean the sub is easy to find. After searching for over an hour, the crew sees some World War II wreckage.
We come across what appears to be an upside-down amphibious tracked vehicle. Looks like there's been damage to the underside of it.
These are the wrecks of several amphibious assault vehicles. But nestled among them,
Okay, got something coming up here.
what at first glance could be a torpedo is actually the stern of a Japanese midget submarine.
Pisces 4 and 5, we're at the stern section.
The size and shape are unmistakable to historian Go Okumoto. To learn more, he and Parks want to examine the rudder, the movable fin that steers the sub.
We want to see the rudders. We're trying to match the shape of the rudders to that single screw guard.
The rudder design on the 5 subs sent to Pearl Harbor was never used again. That's because it was a liability.
The rudder is very small in proportion to the body of the ship. This means that it is not very powerful. This makes it necessary for the sub to have a large turning radius.
After Pearl Harbor, the Japanese would change the rudder design to make the midget subs more maneuverable. The Pisces 5 moves in for a closer look.
So this looks like it landed on the tail. It's kind of crumpled up a little bit.
Though the stern is badly damaged, the rudder on its back is still visible.
We still do see the small, thin rudders. Based on that, it's consistent with a Pearl Harbor submarine.
One piece of the puzzle may be in place, but a cable dangling from the stern doesn't quite fit.
What's the curved piece of metal to the left? Is that a cable?
It's a cable.
Go believes this cable is completely out of place and not part of any Pearl Harbor midget sub.
Pisces 4, we're moving on.
Terry Kirby steers the Pisces 5 toward the second piece of the wreck, as the Pisces 4 follows. Before the war, the American military knew almost nothing about these midget subs. They were the Japanese Navy's most guarded secret weapon.
We simply didn't know about these midget submarines. And when they appeared at Pearl Harbor, they actually caused quite a stir.
The December 7th attack turned out to be not only a military surprise, but also a technological one. Other countries were developing midget subs, but they were mostly human-guided torpedoes, crude, unreliable, and often suicide weapons.
Well, technically speaking, Japanese midget subs were first superior to their counterparts produced by British, German, or Italian navies.
The Japanese versions were more like real submarines, but much more compact.
They were able to sort of miniaturize their propulsion technology and use batteries.
The midget sub made ingenious use of its limited space. Divided into 7 compartments, both pilot and captain operated inside a control room the size of a closet, crammed with switches, instruments, and a radio telegraph. These cleverly designed machines were constructed in a closely guarded plant in 3 separate sections, almost the same way the mystery sub would be found decades later. Terry Kirby maneuvers into position next to what appears to be the midsection of a Japanese midget sub.
It is much different than I expected. The sub is quite wrecked.
Pisces 4, Pisces 5.
Parks and Go are looking for a pulley.
East, west.
The mouth of Pearl Harbor was protected by anti-torpedo nets, so the midget subs had net cutters attached to the bow. A cable was installed with a pulley to guide the net up and over the sub so it wouldn't get caught. At first, they can't see it. Then,
all right, so there's a tensioning pulley.
after Pearl Harbor, both pulley and cable were modified. According to historian Go Okamoto, this pulley looks like it belongs on a Pearl Harbor midget sub. Yet with each new clue comes another puzzle. They find a mysterious cable attached to the midsection, just like the one on the stern. But there's still one more piece to examine.
Roger, can you give us a range and bearing to the bow section, over?
The sharp-edged net cutters attached to the bow of the 5 Pearl Harbor midget submarines were unique. Unlike any others that followed, they were shaped like a figure 8.
After the Pearl Harbor attack, it was assumed that the midget submarines had trouble getting through our nets, so they added these great big net cutters that looked like something out of a Jules Verne novel.
The figure 8 net cutter is key to identifying midget sub number 5.
The current is put us in position.
The Pisces submersibles move in on the bow.
And there it is, right frickin' there.
Admiral Ueda confirms the discovery.
It is in the shape of a number 8. One can conclude definitely that this was the special submarine that was used in Pearl Harbor.
Go Okamoto agrees.
This last midget sub.
This is the last midget sub.
Out of sight at the bottom of the sea for almost 70 years, the 5th midget sub has at last been found. A giant piece of the Pearl Harbor puzzle has fallen into place. And now the key question can perhaps be answered. We know that none of the other midget subs successfully fired their torpedoes inside Pearl Harbor. But unlike the other 4, did midget sub number 5 fire its torpedoes into a battleship?
The Navy High Command actually believed that it heavily damaged or sunk one American battleship at Pearl Harbor.
Japanese war records reveal that shortly after midnight on December 7, 1941, midget sub number 5 surfaced 7 miles outside of Pearl Harbor on the back of its mother sub. As the mother sub slowly descended for the launch, the 2-man crew of number 5 was ready for action. Pilot Sadamu Kamita sent a final letter to his parents.
Should anything happen to me, do not grieve, for I have dedicated my life in service to His Imperial Majesty.
Years earlier, Commander Masaji Yokoyama had written 4 words on his Naval Academy notebook:
vigor, spirit, patience, and honesty.
Both men would need these attributes in the hours ahead. Petty Officer Kichiji Dewa recalls that Kamita and Yokoyama were highly qualified for the job.
They were specially selected ones who proved to be at the top of their class. We were more than brothers, especially for midget submarines. It is something that deals with life and death.
Dewa was the last person to speak with the crew.
Before going off to attack, the captain of the midget submarine said, "Thank you for your maintenance work." The only response I could give him was, "Please take care and good luck."
With that, the two submarines pulled apart. The mother sub remained at sea, while number 5 headed straight for the mouth of Pearl Harbor. But did it do any harm? The camera on Pisces 5 is able to peer right inside the torpedo tubes. Both of them are empty.
Right at the business end of the bow section of the midget submarine, staring right down the empty torpedo tubes. It's an amazing sight.
But if midget sub number 5 succeeded in firing its torpedoes, did they find their target? Around 10:40 p.m., some 12 hours after the attack, Petty Officer Dewa received a message in Morse code from midget sub number 5. The Japanese characters Kira, a message that made no sense. Dewa thinks the exhausted crew made a mistake.
Yokoyama sub wanted to send the signal Tora, but I think they mistakenly sent Kira instead.
Tora begins with a ... Kira begins with a -. All it takes is an extra second on the clicker to turn a dot into a dash.
Their hand might have slipped.
Tora was a Japanese code word.
The airplanes that flew to Hawaii sent the same signal. Tora, Tora, Tora.
It meant we have succeeded in our surprise attack. The mother sub sent word to the Japanese High Command, where the report of success was taken as fact. In their absence, the midget submariners were accorded the highest honors.
During the wartime, these midget sub crews were regarded as hero gods.
Which is sort of like in between human and God. And they sold posters of them. They were sort of like the rock stars of World War II Japan.
The Japanese media embraced the idea that these men had sacrificed everything for the nation, made a film about them.
They had books written about them. But the midget submariners were given vast amounts of credit for the success of the attack.
And for Petty Officer Dewa, who had come to know the crew of number 5, the message had a special meaning.
They did it. That's what I felt. We were eagerly waiting for the news of success. When we finally received it, I realized our success.
The 2 empty torpedo tubes appear to support that success. But just because the tubes are empty doesn't mean the torpedoes were fired. Perhaps they were removed. The answer to this question cannot be found below.
Pisces 5, okay, you are clear to surface. Clear to surface, over.
Definitely a Pearl Harbor sub. The empty torpedo tubes just really stand out.
Forensic historian Park Stevenson wants to discover exactly what those empty torpedo tubes mean. He sends all the information to microbial ecologist Laurie Johnston, an expert in what happens to metals underwater.
Think of the sub as melting into the sea, returning...
Even though the encrustation on the torpedo tubes looks like rust, it's not. Ordinary rust is a purely chemical reaction. This is something entirely different, known as a rusticle.
A rusticle is a living organism. It's actually bacteria, microorganisms, that are naturally found in the environment.
Also found on the wreck of the Titanic, rusticles feed on metal in salt water.
This is an example of a rusticle. It's full of little crevices and cracks and tunnels. So you're not dealing with one type of bacteria, you're dealing with multiple types of bacteria, a consorm or consortium of bacteria. Each different tunnel has different types of bacteria working together. That's why they're so good at being able to break down steel. Any types of metal, any types of nutrients, they're able to incorporate that within the rustical structure.
Bacteria most likely would have started breaking down midget sub number 5 soon after it sank.
Once the sub has been in the water for a very short period of time, within weeks and months, encrustation has already started to form. So it's almost like cementing the torpedo within the tube.
That would make it extremely dangerous to remove.
It would be taking your life in your own hands by removing an active, alive torpedo that had started to cement in the tube.
Lori believes all the evidence points in a single direction.
It's my conclusion after analyzing the data that this sub fired its torpedoes prior to its sinking.
If midget sub number 5 fired both of its powerful long lance torpedoes, what was the target? Just 40 feet beneath the surface of Pearl Harbor lays the wreck of the USS Arizona, where over 1,000 American servicemen lost their lives, and where most of them still remain.
I have click. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
Diver John Chatterton and National Park Service archaeologist Matt Russell will search for evidence of a torpedo hit on the hull of the Arizona. It's a war grave. Only a select few are permitted to dive here, and even fewer are allowed to film what lies at rest beneath the waves. As Chatterton and Russell explore the wreck, the events of the day come alive.
This is a stairway on December 7th, 1941. American sailors would have been running up these steps, grabbing onto these handrails, and trying to save their ship.
This is the original wood planking that covered the main deck of Arizona back here in the stern.
This looks like scarring from shrapnel over here and over there.
It could be battle damage from the December 7th attack.
We know that the Arizona was attacked by bombs from above, but some eyewitnesses say it was also torpedoed from below.
Crew was doing that. They were cutting the lines here and getting people across.
Okay, but you definitely...
Arnold Bauer was aboard the USS Vestal, a repair ship moored alongside the Arizona.
So you are 100% confident that the Arizona received one or more torpedoes during the attack?
Yep. I saw the track.
Okay, so you were standing here at the quarterdeck.
And I went over on this side to see what was going to happen to this side.
Wait a minute, why did you go running over here?
Because I figured if a torpedo was going to hit here, I wanted to be on the other side.
On the morning of December 7th, 1941, Don Stratton was defending the Arizona from incoming fire. And he remembers a pair of torpedoes heading towards the ship.
And I swear to this day that 2 of them were headed right toward the Arizona and the Vestal.
For those people who say that the Arizona definitely wasn't torpedoed, what do you have to say to them?
They weren't there.
But you saw them?
I saw them.
You saw the torpedo?
For sure.
But after hours of searching, Matt Russell and John Chatterton can't find any evidence of a torpedo hit.
We've gone over virtually every inch of the port side of Arizona's bow. We don't see anything that would indicate damage from a torpedo.
But what if that torpedo was a dud? Anti-submarine expert Tom Taylor has uncovered an obscure passage in a congressional report by Admiral Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet. It describes an unexploded torpedo sighted inside Pearl Harbor, one that may have come from midget sub number 5.
At the end of one of the paragraphs, it states a recovered unexploded torpedo carried an explosive charge of 1,000 pounds. We knew that the aerial torpedoes were only around 500 pounds.
That could only be a submarine torpedo. The aerial torpedoes were less than half that charge.
The fact that he reported that they recovered this torpedo indicates corroborating evidence that a midget submarine had penetrated Battleship Row and had fired upon it.
We will never know if that torpedo was intended for the USS Arizona. But if it was a dud, that still leaves one more torpedo unaccounted for. On the morning of the attack, the USS West Virginia and the USS Oklahoma were close to the Arizona on Battleship Row. Two naval experts believe they have found a photograph of midget sub number 5 in action against at least one of them.
Here we are.
Recovered after the war, this picture was taken by a camera on a Japanese plane the morning of December 7th. It's fuzzy and unclear, but some experts believe it's a midget sub firing a torpedo straight into Battleship Row.
To this point was roughly 1,600 feet. We have numerous torpedo tracks in the water.
Naval Intelligence Officer John Rodgard and forensic engineer Peter K. Sue have spent years analyzing this single photograph.
What we see in this photo is the effects of the initial aerial torpedo strikes against Battleship Row. We can see the concussion waves radiating out from the ships that have been hit. We can see torpedo tracks in the water. We see an object in the water with a distinctive horizontal feature and a distinctive vertical feature.
Both are features of a midget submarine.
The vertical feature would be the sail, the horizontal feature, the hull. We can see behind it plumes of water caused by a propeller.
Could those plumes of water be caused by a torpedo being dropped by an airplane?
No, because the torpedo hitting the water has a distinctive splash. It's a forward movement. This does not have that characteristic. It's more of a fountain effect caused by a propeller.
The propeller of midget sub number 5. Whenever a Japanese midget sub fires a torpedo, there's a sudden loss of balance.
A torpedo weighs about 1 ton. The sub weighs 46 tons. When a torpedo is launched, the forward part suddenly gets 1 ton lighter,
which in turn rocks the sub up and down as the crew struggles to regain control. This creates a unique plume of water called a rooster tail, which occurs when the propeller flies out of the water. But did the torpedo hit its target? The rooster tails in the photograph could offer a clue.
It generates a surface disturbance.
According to Sue, an expert in fluid dynamics, one of these rooster tails may also be the result of the midget sub torpedo hitting its mark.
This kind of animation.
Under John and Peter's guidance, NOVA has taken the team's original classified calculations and re-engineered them into revealing animation. When a torpedo blasts into a ship, it produces a shock wave, powerful enough to lift a sub out of the sea, even at a distance. The shock wave created by an airborne torpedo isn't powerful enough to reach the midget sub.
The area generated by the shock wave does not reach the submarine.
Because a torpedo fired by a midget sub has a warhead almost twice the size as an airborne one, the shock wave it creates radiates much farther. And when that torpedo hits its target,
cavitation extends beyond the submarine and lifts it above the surface.
But how does the animation compare with the original photograph?
What we see in the animation is the effect of the explosion on both the submarine and the large rooster tail. As we can see as a snapshot in time of the large plume behind the submarine in the photograph and the plume rising alongside the West Virginia. And the correlation is perfect.
The West Virginia took at least 7 torpedo hits. The Oklahoma was hit by up to 9 torpedoes. While most were launched from planes, Rodgard and Sue believed that 2 of those torpedoes were fired by midget sub number 5.
One striking the West Virginia, the other one appearing to move towards the Oklahoma.
This leaves us with conflicting conclusions.
I saw the track.
So you were standing here.
If the accounts of some eyewitnesses and the Nimitz report are to be believed, one torpedo was fired at the Arizona, but turned out to be a dud. If the photographic experts are to be believed, then 2 torpedoes were fired, hitting the West Virginia and the Oklahoma. Either way, it appears likely that midget sub number 5 successfully fired its torpedoes inside Pearl Harbor. So after completing its mission, where did it go?
We actively know through documents and through primary source photographs that there was a hunt for these submarines. The chances of one getting out, I think, is extremely narrow.
During the attack, a U.S. naval minesweeper reported both sighting and firing upon what appeared to be a midget submarine trying to escape the harbor.
They had nautical charts of Hawaii in their hand. They had the basic map of the inner harbor memorized in their head.
Where would the sub go? What was safe?
Okay, so if we're Yokoyama here, as he's starting to run out of options, if he's trying to escape...
Park Stevenson examines a Japanese map from one of the recovered midget subs.
So if I'm looking at this chart and I'm seeming to run out of options, there's this area right here which is open, and according to this Japanese legend over here on the side, the West Lock doesn't have a whole lot in it.
Parks believes number 5 escaped to the relative isolation of the West Lock, at the time a backwater fueling area. But what happened to the sub and its crew? Commander Masaji Yokoyama and pilot Sadamu Kamita. During the investigation of the wreck, the team discovered what could be a frightening clue. About 10 feet of the sub appears to be missing.
If you look at the edges of this torn steel here, it's bent outward. Whatever did the damage back here came from inside the sub.
In order to keep Japan's secret weapon out of enemy hands, the crew was instructed to escape if they could, but to destroy their submarine by igniting a scuttling charge lashed to the midsection. Did Yokoyama and Kamita follow these instructions? And if so, how? NOVA has recruited a team of experts to find out.
Watch that pull.
If the 2 men scuttled their sub on the surface, they could have lit the fuse and possibly escaped with their lives. If the crew was submerged, then the crew is probably still sealed inside.
This thin metal here is scale thickness to the thickness of the subhull.
Okay.
Not exactly.
Naval engineer Roger Long has created a scale model of a midget submarine from an old scuba tank.
Whoa.
Demolitions expert David Loring is in charge of the action.
This is Naval Weapons Station Earl EOD demolition range. About 11,000 acres of bombs and bullets.
And we're going to test it on the surface with this open as if they set off the scuttling charge of the sub floating. And then we're going to explode it underwater with a plastic cap to simulate the fact that the hatch only has very small resistance to blowing open. We'll be looking for differences in the damage pattern between the surface submarine and the sunken submarine.
We're going to be utilizing underwater explosives, C4. We're going to place it inside the sub in the approximate location that the scuttling charges are placed, which is in this area here.
The first experiment will replicate a scuttling charge with the midget sub surfaced.
Fire in the hole! Fire in the hole! Fire in the hole!
The water helped us.
The first result is disappointing. It doesn't match the damage discovered underwater.
It doesn't look anything like the one we're thinking about.
The team decides to experiment with a slightly larger charge.
Fire in the hole!
I think we overdid it a little bit.
We're going to need another tank.
Whether the charge is large or small, it appears that midget sub number 5 was not scuttled on the surface. A new tank is prepared, and the replica of the midget sub is secured to the bottom.
Next, we want to replicate the other surface model with a smaller charge, with exactly the same charge, but at the bottom of that tank over there, so that we can see what happened if it exploded on the bottom.
Fire in the hole!
The damage is a lot more similar to the Pearl Harbor sub, which leads me to think that the scuttling charge was set off with the sub on the bottom, not on the surface.
That's very possible.
The demolition team concludes that the sub was scuttled underwater, which implies the remains of the crew are still inside. But none of this explains how midget sub number 5 wound up in 3 pieces at the bottom of the ocean, several miles outside Pearl Harbor. During the underwater investigation, 3 mysterious cables were found attached to all 3 pieces of the submarine.
We've got 4 mating surfaces.
For a salvage diver like John Chatterton, this can only mean one thing.
My best guess is that this submarine was salvaged. It was brought up, put on some kind of platform. It was cut apart. The 3 sections were taken apart, and then they were taken out and dumped.
But who dumped it and why?
Hi, aloha.
John Chatterton joins Park Stevenson for a closer look at the West Loch, where the team believes midget sub number 5 was scuttled.
What do we have over here, Parks?
Well, this is the Wapia Peninsula. It's largely uninhabited as part of the Naval Reservation. Back in 1941, it was covered with sugar cane fields. But this is the entrance to the West Loch.
And then they see it. The final clue, hidden in plain sight.
Now, what we're approaching here is the wreck of the LST-480.
An LST. It stands for Landing Ship Tank. These are naval vessels built to carry troops, cargo, and tanks directly onto shore. The area surrounding the wreck of midget sub number 5 is littered with the landing craft the LSTs carried.
That's a big rock here.
Okay, then the other target...
Oh no, it's not a rock, it's a landing craft.
Oh. When we were searching for the midget sub pieces, we ran across numerous damaged amphibious tracked vehicles.
Oh no, this is another landing craft. Different one. They're all over the place, okay.
But why are they here? Turns out, Pearl Harbor suffered more than one unexpected disaster on a Sunday morning. It took place 3 years later, on May 21st, 1944. Unlike December 7th, this second disaster is not well known, because until recently it was veiled in secrecy. As the Navy prepared for the invasion of the Pacific island of Saipan, a terrible explosion claimed the lives of almost 200 people in the West Loch.
There was an accident in the ammunition handling aboard the LST-353.
The explosion spread from LST to LST, sank 6 LSTs, killed a couple hundred sailors, wounded hundreds more.
The invasion needed to get back on track, so the West Lock was cleaned up quickly and quietly. The remnants of the disaster that could be raised were hauled outside the harbor and dumped. But along with the damaged equipment, it appears the Navy may have also scooped up Midget Sub Number 5, long after it was scuttled in the West Lock.
It's my contention that during that cleanup, they found our midget sub, they raised it, they put it in with the rest of the debris, and took it out there and dumped it all together.
Perhaps that's why it now lies amidst an assortment of U.S. military hardware from the West Lock disaster, 3 miles outside Pearl Harbor, 1,000 feet at the bottom of the sea. Today, Admiral Ueda visits the wreck of Midget Sub Number 5 to honor the remains of pilot Sadamu Kamita and Commander Masaji Yokoyama.
Mr. Kamita, here is your brother. Here is Mr. Deva, who accompanied you to Pearl Harbor.
A cup full of sand is carefully removed from the sea floor beneath the sealed control room of the Midget Sub and given to Admiral Ueda to take home.
The remains or the spirits of the dead from the submarine would now be reunited with the sand.
Admiral Ueda presents the sand to Petty Officer Dewa. He brings it to a memorial service for Japanese sailors who lost their lives in midget submarines.
The sand that is brought back from Hawaii is purified, now becomes Japanese soil, so to speak.
For Kichiji Dewa, the mission is at last over. For Park Stevenson, it's always been about bringing the facts to light.
I want their accomplishment known so that their sacrifice will have meaning.
Time may yet uncover new details in the history of Pearl Harbor. And each step we take towards the truth of the heroic and tragic events of that day not only honors the people who lived it, but serves future generations as the real story is finally revealed.
This is what we were. This is where we've been. This is who we are.
The hope still lives, and the dream shall never die.
This is our experience, the American experience. Egypt. Pyramids, tombs, mummies, and ships? New evidence could completely revise our view of the ancient Egyptians.
It was so incredible, so unbelievable.
These were probably the highest expression of engineering of any society.
Were the people who built the pyramids also some of the greatest seafarers in the ancient world? Building Pharaoh's ship, next time on Nova.
Major funding for Nova is provided by the following.
Natural gas is a cleaner burning fuel, yet a lot of natural gas has impurities like CO2 in it.
Controlled freeze zone is a new technology being developed by ExxonMobil to remove the CO2 from the natural gas so we can safely store it where it won't get into the atmosphere. ExxonMobil is spending more than $100 million to build a plant that will demonstrate this process. I'm very optimistic about it because this technology could be used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions significantly.
Will your savings be enough to fund your retirement? What will happen if your spouse outlives you by many years? What will happen if you outlive your savings? Pacific Life knows that tomorrow's questions require planning today. With financial solutions and strength, Pacific Life can help you and your financial professional develop a plan. Pacific Life, the power to help you succeed.
And David H. Koch. And
discovering new knowledge. HHMI.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. To see the companion website for this program, or to find out more about NOVA, visit NOVA's website at pbs.org. This NOVA program is available on DVD at shawpbs.org or call 1-800-PLAY-PBS.